Hello, empowered woman. Welcome to this episode of the Empowered Woman podcast. Today, I'm sharing an interview that truly brings me so much joy, gratitude, and also pride. I got to have a good friend back on the show, Natalie Tysdal, who's built a career of 28 years as a journalist and news anchor, and recently took the leap, decided to leave something stable to try something new. Her second act, as she calls it, is starting a podcast and focusing on topics that light her up, such as family, health, and mindset. We talked about learning to love to do hard things, facing challenges, adjusting to transitions, and so much more. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Empowered Woman podcast, the #1 show on personal growth, visibility, and profit for women entrepreneurs. If you're wanting to start believing in yourself, giving yourself permission to succeed, and let your voice be heard to make an impact in the world as an entrepreneur, this is the place for you. I am so glad that you're here. My name is Marcia Spurk, and I'm your host, triplet mom, woman empowerment coach, and all things motivation extraordinaire. Welcome again, and let's dive into today's episode. Hi, Natalie. Thank you so much for joining me today.
So good to talk to you, Marta. I always enjoy talking to you.
Yes, me too. I am so excited to have you back. For those of you who may not have heard Natalie's episode, I'm actually super proud because you were my 100th episode. And I decided to do that on purpose because I was so proud of myself to have you on.
Oh, thank
I
you.
just made it happen to have you be the 100th one. So it's easy to remember.
Well, congratulations on 100. I'm working on number 3, so you've accomplished a lot.
Yes, I'm almost to 200. I'm not going to wait until 200 to publish this one. But yeah, super proud of that one. And you shared some amazing stuff about your life and your career and your routine and being a mom and being a journalist and anchor and all the things. And so today I wanted to go a little bit deeper into the human side and the craziness that we've lived in 2020, especially from the perspective of somebody working in the news industry and also your new direction. So I'm so excited for all of that. But before, I just have to say, for people that may not be familiar, although I do overshare on social media whenever I get my TV segments and all the things, because that is something I'm proud of.
You should be.
Yes. And well, when I first started working with a publicist and somebody to help me like gain more exposure, and they were telling me, how to pitch to TV shows and all of that, I had no idea what to expect and what was going to happen. And my business wasn't even super established at the time, but I decided I love a challenge, first thing. And so I decided I wanted to put myself out there and see what happened. And I wasn't really expecting at all to meet somebody that was so welcoming and so warm like you. And I have to tell you that one of the biggest things that helped me push forward was your encouragement and really your interest in what I do. Because we start in this path of entrepreneurship, and in a way, we seek for validation to know if what we're doing is valuable and if people respond to it. And to me, to have somebody who's, has a career of several years, who is a mom, to see me as this younger person with little kids and, telling me that what I'm doing is wonderful, and to really validating what I do, to have me back on the show several times, I'm just extremely, extremely grateful. So I just wanted to preface everything with that.
Well, let me say you're welcome and thank you, because in my role as a journalist, what we look for is people who are experts and people who we can learn from as journalists, and that our audience can learn from. And you certainly have done that. So I am glad that I could validate that. I don't think you need validation, but I'm glad that it made you feel good.
Yes, I so appreciate it. Well, so I wanted to hear from you, I think starting from, I guess you could introduce yourself just quickly, quick blurb for those who are not familiar. And then I wanted to dive into 2020 a little bit.
Sure. My life has changed a lot this year, as I know that is the truth for so many people. I've been a journalist for 28 years. I know I'm dating myself, but I've been a TV anchor. I actually started as a TV photojournalist. I love video. I love taking pictures. And that kind of worked its way into being a producer and a reporter. And most recently, 18 years in Denver, Colorado, as a morning show anchor. Kind of jumped around the country in different places. Grew up in Nebraska. And I've loved my career in journalism. I'm by nature very inquisitive. It's funny because I see that in one of my 3 children. She asks so many questions, and I go, I'm living the mom life now of a daughter who is like that. And I'm sure I was the same way. Very inquisitive. I like to figure stuff out. I like learning new things every day. It's what I loved about the news business. It's every day I felt like I was studying a different topic and becoming a little bit of an expert in many different things. So I'm very grateful for my career as a journalist. And I just made the decision last year, as COVID changed things for many of us, to leave that business, the news business, and start my own business, my own website, my own podcast, and really focus on the things that I think make a difference in people's lives rather than breaking news and hard news, which to me right now, at least where I am, and I think a lot of people relate to that, is family and health and positive mindset. So those are the 3 things I'm really focusing on. There are so many interviews to do with that. And I'm in month 2 of my new journey.
Oh, that's so exciting. And I remember several times when we would talk and interact, you would say how you had taken a break before because it's not, an easy lifestyle, especially for you working in the morning, waking up at 3 some in the morning. It's a very harsh routine, especially for a mom. And you've been doing it for several years, and you considered stopping several times. And that's something that I was wanting to know. Is that something that you decided pre-pandemic, but then you weren't able to do it, or is that something that came around afterwards? I'm curious.
I think I hear your question because people ask, are you going to go back again? You left and you're going to go back again, right? And the answer is no. I think it took a lot of courage for me to finally say, even though I know I'm good at that, and even though I know that it's comfortable, it's really not what I want for the rest of my life. And it's hard to leave, really hard to leave something that's comfortable. Something that I felt like I did in my sleep because I was up in the middle of the night. Literally. I really was awake on TV. But it took a lot for me to finally say, I'm going to give up that thing that, first of all, people said, wait a minute, you've got a dream job. You anchor a morning show in a wonderful city. You get to interview new people every day. But, during the pandemic, we were working at home and we had to set up these mini studios. I had a studio in a closet, and then I went to the basement because the closet was too claustrophobic. And I just found all these little spots in my house where I was broadcasting live every day. And I was doing interviews like this, like you and I are, often on Zoom, sometimes on Skype. And I would publish those interviews. I would put them out on my YouTube channel, and I would get all of these hits on my YouTube channel. And I realized I don't need to do what I do at 3 a.m. And I don't necessarily need to do it on television because of today's technology. I can still do interviews and I can still make an impact right here in my home. And I can do it through podcasting and through YouTube and through my website. So that gave me the confidence. I don't know that I really would have made that leap if I hadn't experienced it during the pandemic.
That's so interesting. Okay. So the working at home opened up those doors and made it even easier for you to take the leap and make that decision. Because I remember when we talked before, you talked about the hard, not only just, the hard hours, but also the hard news. And that's something that really, I think, was more evident for me because I was more aware because of knowing you as a person, how I think for us, the public, when we watch these people that have this job, we see the glamour. I think that's basically what we see, like the dream job, just like what we're saying. And we forget that they are also people who have families, who get tired, who get overwhelmed, who have emotions. And when you shared a little bit in the last interview here on the show about the whole experience that you had, especially with the Aurora shooting, how, hard that was, I had that in the back of my mind during the pandemic. with you having to handle all the hard news and all the uncertainty with everything that happened in 2020. Yeah. And especially since you were already thinking about stopping and then having gone through all of that, I would love for you to kind of give us a little bit of a backstage scoop into the feelings and how that was from the perspective of the professionals, things that we don't really know because we just see the glamour and the glitz because we really don't know.
For a lot of people, they have their consumption of news, some only on their phone, some they only read. Some people still have the habit of turning on the morning news to get a few headlines on the weather. But you think about your normal consumption of news, and it might be 20 minutes a day, if that. For a lot of people, it's even less now, the studies show. For some people, it's a whole lot more because they become addicted to it. But a normal consumption of news might be 20 minutes. But for me, it was 5 hours a day. And needing to master that on television for 5 hours a day, not to mention the preparation for it, and then the interviews afterwards, and then making sure that I'm caught up all day long and before I go to bed. Gosh. So it was nonstop. And I don't know, honestly, Marta, if it's the day and age that we live, or if it's my age or being a mother. But when I was in my 20s and 30s doing that, it was normal to me.
Okay.
Now, I think maybe something switched for me that was the mindset. And when I talk about my new venture being in family and health and mindset, that we become what we fill our minds with.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe that if we are filling our minds with good, healthy information and podcasts like this, and hopefully people find that in my podcast, that you leave and you feel refreshed and empowered and you feel good about yourself and what you're about to take on. But if we fill our minds every day with depressing things and anxiety-ridden information, then that's what we're going to become. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't be aware of the world around us. I've really changed my habits in the last few months where I do get a daily dose of information, but I've had to really focus on not letting that happen. When we've had some big breaking news in the last couple of months, I find myself doing what I used to do. Like, oh, what's happening? Oh, who do I know? Who do I know that can get more information? Because that's the mindset of a reporter for so many years. That's what I do. It's how I operate. I had to take a step back and say, I don't need to do that. I would rather be filling my mind and my family with things that are helping them, their well-being, their health, their exercise, their mindset. And that has been that's been a challenge for me. It's really hard to change habits. And that was a habit. And I know people relate to that. So I think I became used to that. And it's almost, and I may have said this in our last podcast, it's how I think of it, that being a journalist during a breaking news situation is very much like being an emergency worker, where you put everything aside and you deal with the moment. And although it's difficult and it's depressing and it's scary, you just deal with the moment and you have a job to do. And that job is to deliver information to people who need that information. But I found late as a mom that I could do that to an extent. There were times, as you mentioned, there were a theater shooting, the Sandy Hook shooting in particular. Some of those where they involved children. I just turned off. I just said, I can do it, but then I'd go home and I would lose it. And so I could deal in the moment, but it's almost like PTSD. It's like I would wake up in the middle of the night with dreams about my children being in those situations. So again, we're filling our minds with things that then we think about more often. We internalize, we put our children in those situations. There isn't a day, Marta, that I don't pull out of my driveway that I don't think of a child being behind my car, because I've covered so many of those stories. And some of that's healthy. Some of it's okay. It makes us more aware. Too much of it isn't healthy. So I just decided it was time for a second act. It was time for something new. It was time for something that really could induce thought and change. And I thought now is a good time to do it.
Yes, I love that. And especially what you said about having this awareness of how much is too much, especially for us as consumers of the news, because I think everyone kind of went through this last year because everything was so new. It's almost like we were glued to the TV because something else would always show up. Every couple of days there was some new development. And so I would find myself really paying attention because it was one thing after the other, and then elections, and then it's a new year and what's going on. Like, it was non-freaking stop. And after a while, I know. And after a while, I just had to delete. I had like the news app on my phone. I had to delete it. I had to make sure I wasn't engaging with people on my feed that only talked about that, to make sure it wasn't showing, like muting people, snoozing people, just so I, would really protect myself off of that. And one of the things that I remember, I don't know if it was on the podcast or at one time when we were talking, of the several times we've talked, that you mentioned that in the past, when you were, overwhelmed and thinking about taking a break or stopping anchoring the news, I think your husband may have said something like, but people need your heart. They need the way you bring the news. That's the difference. And I am so grateful that you're carrying this on by doing your own thing, because you're still bringing your heart and still bringing this, I think, a light way of talking about topics that may not be hard, that may not be easy to talk about, but that are important as well. And so since you talked a little bit more about the transition and how creating new habits is hard, before we jump into what the podcast is about and what your new podcast and everything that is going on, I would love for you to share a little bit more about how the transition has been, since it's pretty recent. What have you experienced?
Well, my kids aren't used to me being here in the morning. So that's been, I worked 3 o'clock until usually about 11 every day, sometimes a little bit later in the morning. And then I would try to take a nap, but I was just not successful with that ever. So I would spend hours trying, but really my mind, and that's something that I learned, is my mind needed to slow down. I found myself for so many years either in very high speed or crash speed. I would go and go and go, and the life of a morning show anchor, and I needed to catch up on things. And then I'd be volunteering at school, and it's just this crazy busy mode. And I like being busy. It made me happy. But at the same time, I would crash. On a weekend, I might sleep 5 hours during the week. And then on a Saturday morning, 10. Or Friday night into Saturday morning. But then I was groggy all day. So I realized I have a fast speed and I have a crash speed. And I'm trying now to find this mid speed. What is that mid speed that's happy and comfortable and sleeping when your body tells you to wake up and going to bed at a normal time? Like, who does that? Right. Hopefully we all do. But we get into this society of we have to do more, more, more. And that is a habit. And it's a habit that we need to break. And it's a habit that we don't want to teach our children. So the transition has been amazing. I did, for the first month, wake up at between 2 and 3 in the morning every day for about a month. And it was driving me crazy. It's like, why am I waking up? I really want to sleep. But it went away. And I started waking up at 6 and 6:30, and 6:30, 6:45 is now my new norm. And it feels wonderful. Like, to feel normal in the middle of the day instead of feeling what I called zombie mom. Like, I literally felt like I had a hangover every day from lack of sleep. And I thought that was okay. I thought, well, it's okay because I'm working hard. It's not okay. It's not okay for anyone to feel that way. I'm learning self-care. I'm learning to teach my children to take care of themselves that way. So the transition, anytime you make a major life transition, it's a challenge. But I always tell my children, and I love this saying, I heard someone say it a couple of years ago, and I just love it when they say, it's really hard, or I don't know if I can do it. Or when I sent my daughter to college and I dropped her off, the last words I said to her, I'll cry, were, God made you to do hard things. We were built to do hard things. So if we fall into that comfort zone and it's just easy, so I'm just going to do it every day because it's easy, we're not doing the hard things that we were created to do.
And we're not feeling happy or fulfilled too. That's when we know, gotta push ourselves out of our comfort zone. It's hard, but that's when we feel fulfilled. That's just the way it is.
To do that. As soon as someone says it's hard, or I don't know if I can do it, I think, but you have to learn to love to do hard things.
Yeah. It's the only way For sure. So tell us more about your podcast. Well, I think before we started recording, you said, I started with that because this is what I know. So tell us more. Why did you decide to go with that in your new venture? And tell us a little bit more about what your vision is with this and the topics you're going to be covering. Tell us more.
Well, I have to thank you because being on your podcast and doing a few others really opened my mind to this world of podcasting and digital journalism for me, that we don't have to just watch the news, that there are so many ways that we can get information. And I learned that in the last year. I love podcasts. I love filling my mind with positive things, and I have my favorites. And so what I love to do is interview people. What I love to do is, like I said about the news, I love to learn new things. As you knew in being on the morning show with me, a typical interview was 3 minutes. That's just what I was used to. I'd say, you've got 3 minutes, so give me 3 tips and you're done. And I had to cut people off. I have to slow down a little bit now, even in just the speed in which I speak. Like I can slow down. I can actually have a conversation with people on podcasts, ask more questions, dig a little deeper. So I thought that would just be a fun way to start the new venture. Along with it is a new website and a blog and a YouTube channel. And so it all kind of works together. And my hope, as I said a moment ago, is to just help families, help people with their health. The first episode of the podcast was on burnout, appropriately so in my life. And I faced it many times in my life. I think a lot of people relate to it. How do you know if you're reaching burnout? And what do you do? Loved that episode. Second episode on weight. So many people struggle. There's a reason behind that, and it's not all food. Much of it is psychological. This doctor is amazing. I've interviewed him. Most of the people that I interview are people that I have met through my journalism career. Some of my favorite guests over the years that I wanted more time with versus just the 3 minutes. The next episode will be on sleep. That's a big one. And I struggled with it because of shift hours, but for so many people, even who can sleep normal hours, they're not getting good sleep. And what happens when you don't get good sleep? What happens to your body? What happens to your mind? So many people with insomnia. It's a great episode. And the person that I talked to is a longtime friend. So I think that'll be fun. So those types of topics, I want to delve a little bit deeper into education, into relationships. Again, these things that really help our lives instead of hurt or bring us down or cause anxiety.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Those topics are amazing and so helpful. And I'll be looking forward to the sleep one, because that's one of the things that people always ask me. How do you function? How do you do anything when you have triplets? And for me, it was when they were 7 months old, I made a decision because we were moving from Brazil to the US. I invested in a sleep consultant. And for moms, that could be a crazy concept, but when you have multiples, that is very common because obviously it's an impossible situation. And I attribute my entire routine to this day, the last 5 years, to understanding how sleep is important and that I'm not punishing my child by putting them to for a nap or whatever. I'm actually helping them with their development and helping myself, because then I have the time to either rest or do something else. So I'll be on the lookout for that one.
And that sounds like a really good podcast episode on a sleep consultant for children. So pass along that information for me.
Yes.
So important.
The person that I used, she's actually Brazilian, and she lives in Canada, and she does amazing work. So I'll definitely connect you with her because she's incredible.
And so many side topics on that too. I won't go deep, but I learned so much. And some people who you won't believe this, there's like a new concept and a term that's used. I don't think I'll get it right, but it's actually like depriving of yourself of sleep on purpose because it's something you can control. A lot of people who stay up really late, get all their work done and get it because they can control sleep, but they might not be able to control other things, almost like a food disorder, an eating disorder, where I can control that, so I'm going to. And a lot of people unintentionally, they do that because they can control it. And the rest of their life, their health and their well-being is affected because they're not getting a full night of restful sleep.
Yeah. And they're unaware of how that's affecting them. And I see that even with kids, especially because that's been my experience, is then seeing kids that are so angry or, moody throughout the day, or it would just terrify me to see online kids that would fall asleep on their high chair. I'd be thinking to myself, how is that even possible? Because I would never witness that, because they had a set time. We were out of whatever it was that we were doing, and I was putting them down. And it's because people are really unaware of it. And back to what you said before, they say it's hard. But isn't it awful when you're having to deal with the consequences?
That's right.
So choose your hard, right? It's one or the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great topic.
Yes, I love that for sure. It's one I'm passionate about, because it's definitely changed my life. Well, awesome. So I'm super excited for the coming episodes, and I would love for you to share the name, where we can find everything. And something that I didn't tell you before we wrap up is that I've been doing some rapid fire questions with my guests.
Okay.
So do you want to jump on that, and then you tell us more about how to find?
Sure, whatever you want. Go for it.
Awesome. So I have these 5 phrases that I use as the steps of my framework, working with women in empowerment and all the things. So I usually ask people, I just tell you the words, whatever comes to mind. It can be just a couple words, or you can elaborate on it. Feel free. It's always fun to see what people come up with. Ready?
So whatever comes to mind when you say these words.
Yes.
Okay. Sounds like a fun game. I like it.
Yes. So the first one is notice yourself.
Ooh, notice yourself and who God made you to be.
Love that. Listen to yourself.
Listen to yourself by being still. I struggle with that. I like constant movement. So being able to stop and listen to your heart, listen to your gut, and be still.
Yeah, it's not an easy task for me either. Forgive yourself.
Big one. Forgive yourself today and forgive yourself from the past.
Mm-hmm. Empower yourself.
I love this one. Empower yourself to do hard things.
Mm-hmm. And last but not least, transform yourself.
Don't be afraid. Those are the words that come to mind because I lived it. I was so afraid to leave something stable and to try something new. And I am so grateful that I did. I feel good for the first time in many years.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm so happy that you're happy with your decision and that things are going well. Awesome. So tell us how to find you, how to find your show, and everyone go subscribe, go listen, write a review, because Natalie's amazing.
Thank you so much. So NatalieTysdal.com. It's TYSDAL. Everyone tries to put an E at the end, but it's NatalieTysdal.com, the Natalie Tysdal podcast. And you can find it everywhere from iTunes to Spotify, all the normal places. It comes out every Monday, once a week. And I'll be putting some bonus episodes in there pretty soon. But for now, every Monday, and online YouTube channel as well, which is Natalie Tysdal. And I do some kind of bonus stuff and extra interviews there.
Nice. You're doing an amazing job of doing bite-sized videos and things to tease people to go listen to the show. So
it's a lot to keep up with, as you know, but I'm enjoying every bit of it.
Yeah, you're doing an amazing job. Well, thank you so much for joining us again. This was great, as usual. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. So grateful for Natalie, and really grateful for the podcast, for you that have been listening to me for almost 3 years now. Because if I hadn't had this show to keep in touch with the amazing people that I meet in my life, to offer the opportunity to interview them, I wouldn't have had these amazing relationships to nurture. So I'm just gratitude all the way through. I hope you enjoyed our chat, and do go check out Natalie's show. I had the opportunity of being interviewed and was one of the episodes after we recorded this as well. So go on over, connect with Natalie. All the links are in the show notes. Until next time, bye.